And welcome to another edition of Weather and Climate Chat with Monsoon Mike Regensberger and Dr. Michael Davis. Dr. Davis, welcome back to the show.
Thanks again for having me.
And we have a special guest during our second half today, so you've gotten a couple of special guests this semester, which is great. Actually, the semester's done. We're in winter break now, but either way. She is Shana Rose, and she is an environmental geography major, and she's working on some research with Dr. Davis. Shana, welcome.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Pleasure to have you, and we'll look forward to talking with you a little more in the second half. But first, Dr. Davis and I want to talk a little bit about the weather. Crazy, that's all I can say, especially these temperatures. We knew El Nino was going to do screwy things, but it really got warm last weekend.
Refresh my memory. Did either of us go 70?
No, neither. In fact, I wrote it all down here, and I consulted with Sooty the weather cat and Rossby the weather cat, and they both say that we're about even based on what happened last week. Last week, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. Friday, we both called for 58. And the actual temperature at ABE was 58, Reading 59, so I think we both win there.
Yeah, pretty good.
Saturday, you called for 61, 62. I called for 61, 62 also, and it was ABE 61, Reading 62. Perfect.
Right on.
Sunday, you called for 63, 64. I went aggressive, called for 66. It was 68 at both, so I won on that one. But you won on Monday. You called 62, 63. I called only 60, 61, counting on more clouds. And we both got kind of trounced there, but you got trounced less. 68 Allentown, 67 Reading. So
I love verification.
So there you go. So we both are right even on this one. So it definitely we didn't call 70, but I will say that prediction you had earlier this year of no more 70s has come in pretty close to danger a couple times this year. But
yeah, I was kind of holding my breath for a little bit.
It was real. Philly did it easily. I think Philly got 71 on Sunday. Mm-hmm. But we don't claim to forecast for Philly, so we'll let that one slide.
And Philadelphia had a long string of temperatures that were above 60. I talked about on my Facebook page yesterday.
So, of course, everybody's question is, what is causing this? Is it climate change? Is it El Nino? I'm favoring mainly, climate change could have a little bit of impact on it right now, but this just seems like we have a very strong El Nino winter right now.
I think what we're seeing right now is more directly related to the El Nino event. It's going to be very hard to put a global warming, climate change aspect on a singular event what we're seeing with the warmer December and just this past warmer November. I believe it's more in tune with what we're seeing with El Nino, but those effects may exactly magnified by the whole climate change itself.
Right. Now, and we should also mention that, we're in our shorts here on the East Coast, but the West Coast is getting all of our normal weather. It's pretty wild out there.
We had a ridge that was in place over the eastern U.S. and a trough that was in place over the western U.S. That's pretty much atypical for what you find during the wintertime.
Right.
Mainly because how the jet stream interacts with the Rocky Mountains. Typically, you have a ridge that's over the western U.S., so they have a more dry, I guess I'll call it tranquil winter. Usually, at least if you get further up in the mountains, you get the heavy snows and whatnot. But generally, the ridge is parked over there, and the trough is over the eastern U.S., and that's why we get the cold air outbreaks that come out of the Dakotas, Minnesota, and go across the Great Lakes, cause all that lake effect snow for areas that are prone to lake effect snow, like my hometown, Cleveland.
Exactly.
And then that cold air interacts with the Gulf Stream on the eastern coast of the U.S., and then we can get nor'easters and stronger winter storms as a result.
I saw some really cool pictures on Facebook. It had a picture of the same street. You might have seen it too. The same street in Buffalo, 2014, snow over the roof. 2015, nothing.
Yeah, they had, I believe it was 116 years record that was broken without a single measurable snowfall. They did get a trace of snow earlier this year, but nothing measurable.
Now, they finally might have something a little measurable this week, and I see some lake effect snow is possible in those areas.
Yeah, there's lake effect snow over Lake Erie areas. I know I looked back at my Cleveland National Weather Service, and they're already issuing lake effect snow watches for the predominant snow belt area. And even in the northwestern PA toward Erie and Buffalo, they're going to be possibly seeing some lake effect snow as this cold front crosses the lake.
And that's what we have crossing our area now. And finally, this weekend, we'll feel a little more like winter. temporarily. We'll get to that in a second, but it it will
Yes,
feel
temporarily.
It will feel a little more like winter this weekend with temperatures upper 30s, low 40s. Looks like.
Yeah, but the high pressure is going to be moving in, so it's not going to be that, I guess, cold.
Yeah, it's basically normal. Basically normal
because of the sun being out.
It'll
but
feel
with the sun being low in the sky, you have very low insolation rate right now. So that sun may be more of an anemic sun where you're not going to have a lot of energy reaching the surface, but the sun will be out.
So we should emphasize that it will be cold this weekend, but nothing really unusual, really what it should be this time of year.
And it should be windy, too.
And it should be windy. Okay. Now, we won't focus too much on Christmas time because we plan to record one more of these before Christmas. We don't know the date yet, but we can touch on it quickly since it's getting a lot of press. Looks like we soar again in time for Christmas Eve, Christmas Day. Now, the models have been a little bit confused on how aggressive to get. A couple days ago, I saw them, shooting us up into the 70s on Christmas Eve. Now I see them backing off a little bit, maybe low 60s. And there's going to also be a front somewhere around at that time, too, so that's going to make it a little tricky as well. What do you think happens Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, long range?
I would probably say that you're going to have a low-pressure system that's going to move across the Great Lakes.
Right.
I do think it's going to be crossing pretty much by Indiana, moving up into Michigan. You're probably going to have more of the warmer air on our side. The pressure gradient is going to be, I think, pretty critical to see how much warmth we actually have. If you have a tighter pressure gradient, you're going to have stronger winds from the south, which should promote more transport of that warmer air from the south into our region. I would probably lean more toward the mid-60s at this point.
Okay.
Maybe favoring upper 60s. I know I've gone a little conservative on some of my forecasts, so I'll go a little bit higher just to try to hedge my bets, perhaps.
Some people are getting really depressed. Like, this is going to be a horribly warm Christmas, but that front, the timing of that front is critical because I saw if that front moves through overnight Christmas Eve into Christmas Day, which right now, recording this Thursday, December 17th, looks like it will, might have a little more seasonal temperatures on Christmas Day, maybe.
Yeah, it depends on when that cold front comes through, because there's definitely going to be a sharp temperature gradient. That front's going to be quite strong, at least what the models are showing.
Right.
Now, when you're talking about places like further back in the Great Plains and Great Lakes that are going to be more in that colder air, it's probably going to be more like a Christmas-type atmosphere for places like Chicago or Milwaukee or maybe even Detroit.
I looked back at some other unusual Christmases, and I have to go back to one of my favorite winters. I was just a child at the time, but it was also an El Nino winter. If you've done research on El Ninos, 82, 83. Mm-hmm. Christmas 82, Philadelphia had a high of 65, and I talked to some old-timers in the area that remember that. They said people were barbecuing on Christmas Day. February 11th, 1983, a month and a half later, the blizzard of 83. We had about 24 inches here. Mm-hmm. El Nino winter. Could that happen again? Could we have 2 months from now be a totally different world?
It certainly isn't impossible.
Yeah.
And the National Weather Service Philadelphia in their discussion today were saying this is by no means a precursor for the entire winter. We're going to get snow at some point.
Right.
We're probably going to get some type of stronger storm probably not till January or February at this point. And that's 2 weeks to bring us to the end of the year look pretty dry and warm.
Okay, so it could be another 82, 83. We'll see. At least it's
a
snow fan. That's what you got to hope for at this point.
That's something known as analog forecasting, where you look at historical events to say, okay, maybe you're going to have this type of event occur at this time.
All right, so there you have it, folks. Looking ahead to the next couple of days, cold for the weekend, but nothing too extreme, about average for where we should be. Back up next week, temperatures increasing and maybe topping off Christmas Eve in the upper 60s again, maybe. We'll see. And then cooling off a little bit for the end of the next week. So that's where it stands now. But prone to updates as we get closer. And hopefully we'll record.
Stay tuned.
And hopefully we'll record one more of these before then. And hopefully you follow our pages, Dr. Michael Davis Weather Forecasts and Monsoon Mike's Weather Headquarters. So, all right. So let's move on to our topic of the week. And actually, we're going to make it kind of a multi-topic. First, you wanted to briefly discuss the Paris climate talks, and they pretty much wrapped up now.
Yeah, they've wrapped up, and they have reached an agreement.
Good.
187 nations joined in.
Pretty historic.
And they pretty much pledged that they were going to do their own agendas to get to where they need to be for curbing greenhouse gas emissions. Now, it's great that the whole world got together to say, you know what, climate change is something important to us. We need to start curbing these carbon emissions. But if you start looking at the document itself, they really have no roadmap on what needs to be done. There's no way to say, okay, I'm going to be cutting back carbon. Well, how are you going to do that? Or to another extent, if I don't reach that, what's going to happen to me? So there are some climate scientists out there that feel that document's lacking teeth to it, and how are you actually going to police it?
Right.
So it just seems like something we've seen in the past of just promises and no real implementation or strategies involved to get from where we are now to a more sustainable, carbon neutral environment. That's probably why they're going to talk about this again in another 5 years.
Right.
Because every 5 years they're going to be meeting and probably ratcheting up what they promised, but how many of those countries are going to actually be there?
Right. So, again, there's concerns on how it's going to be policed and enforced, but still I would say that what happened the past couple of weeks is pretty historic.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is something that has never been done before.
Never happened, yep.
You've had the whole world, the United States included, come together to pretty much recognize that this is a threat to global security and we need to act upon it before it's too late. They also set the 2 degrees Celsius warming threshold. They don't want to exceed that. Some skeptics argue that we're going to blow past that anyway, no matter
what we do. Yeah.
So it just seems like this is all for naught. But the point being is we actually got an international agreement on this. Now, whether it's also ratified by the United States is another matter,
story.
But it just goes to show that we can actually get the global community together to at least admit that the problem is occurring.
So it's a start.
Yes.
And a very important start.
You got to start somewhere.
Good stuff. All right. Well, we covered that now. So let's move on now to our special guest of the day, Shana Rose. She's an environmental geography major here at KU, and she's also working on some special research with Dr. Davis. Shana, welcome back.
Thank you.
Yeah. So what are you guys working on?
So the research that we're conducting together is looking at temperature and precipitation variability and see how that changes over the agricultural regions that are represented to where cotton grows.
Okay.
And in the state of Texas, because cotton is a very sensitive crop to a lot of precipitation changes and also temperature changes, because when you plant cotton requires a certain level of moisture even in the soil itself along with the atmosphere, and it needs a certain soil temperature for even proper germination to even occur. So we're looking at the years from 2009 to 2014 currently, and maybe hopefully in the future expanding that, and then relating to seeing those changes and how they maybe correlate to agricultural averages of cotton production in those regions, and also seeing climate models and relating to see, is there an actual change going on, and is climate actually affecting directly the production of a sensitive crop like cotton.
So you would say that cotton is one of the more sensitive crops out there? Okay.
And it's also a very important crop to our country's revenue. That
Sure, you don't think of it.
Yeah, and I believe that the United States is the third largest producer of cotton in the world.
Interesting.
And Texas is the one that is the top producer of cotton in the country itself.
Right.
So cotton is a big, important crop in this country, and not only just in the world. And I mean, we use it every day for everything, and we don't necessarily even think about all the stuff we use cotton for.
Absolutely.
So it's a definite...
We're probably wearing some cotton right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just to think of the fact that, like, the change in climate can not only affect the fact of maybe job security and all this other stuff, but the fact that the world could be affected on a global market if cotton as a crop is affected. So
I'm just curious. You said we're the third producer, the third biggest producer. What other countries are big producers?
I know China's
one. Okay.
China's one, and India might be the other one.
Okay, I'm just curious.
So I have to fact check that, but I'm pretty sure we are the third, and I think China and India are ahead of us on that.
So there is a genuine, valid concern that these rising global temperatures that we're having could negatively affect this?
Yeah, and like with some of the research that I've done thus far, seeing that the northern regions in Texas are irrigated, but even though they are irrigated, they suffer more from the drought effects because there was a drought that began in 2011. And looking at seeing how when the drought began in 2011, the production of cotton sharply decreased. So the yield that you got at the end of the season decreased from the year before. So hopefully looking at more, analyzing that specific year and seeing if there was a drought before and see how that has affected and if this is an actual has going on for the last 30 years or more.
That's a very interesting study. Now you're doing this as part of your academics here at KU?
Yeah, we started this before about a year ago, but as a geography major, I have to conduct research as part of my senior STEM project. Sure. So this is kind of taken on itself as part of doing that, which is really cool that you can kind of get to see already before the classes has even started that you need to implement this.
Right.
So I kind of felt like I was one step ahead of everybody else that was still scrounging to kind of even figure out a topic that it's like, I have this topic and it can work. And there was a lot of kinks that I had to figure out to make it work as a senior STEM thesis, but I'm feeling pretty confident about it. So
that's fantastic. Now, everybody's favorite question is how do you want to expand this when you move on from KU? Is this the kind of thing that you want to do?
I don't know. It would be interesting to do it as like a side project.
Okay.
But with having a year left at Kutztown, I've reached a point where I don't know exactly what I want to do after I graduate.
That's okay.
But if I were to continue on and make this as serious research, that maybe even figuring out ways to see if there is genetically modified cotton that's being grown in those same regions and seeing how...
I didn't even think of that, yeah.
How they're being affected, if not more highly affected or less affected, depending on how they're genetically modified.
Good stuff. So Dr. Davis has brought us some interesting guests the past couple of weeks. We had somebody studying algae. We have a young lady now studying cotton. What would you like to say?
And I will say that Shana's done a lot of good work on her research, and she presented at the American Association of Geographers meeting in Chicago earlier this year, and she's going to be presenting at the same conference in San Francisco in March. So she's already has experience presenting her research in that venue, and I think it's exceptional for a student here at Kutztown, especially in our geography department, where there's a lot of motivation to get research done and get essentially their foot in the door, because it looks very good on college resumes that, hey, I've done research before. Hey, I've presented at professional conferences.
Right. So that's something definitely students who are studying in your major should be considering to do in the future.
Yeah, and like as Shana was explaining, we have research methods in senior STEM that the geography students are required to take to help them prepare a thesis or some type of research paper of a topic of their choice.
Very good. Now, is there anywhere that you're like blogging about this or Facebooking or about this that we can follow along with this cotton studies? Because I'm definitely interested. Not yet?
Not necessarily. Okay. I mean, I have some little snippets here and there.
Okay.
But the one thing I wanted to add with what Dr. Davis said is that the fact that I was really surprised of the response I got from people when I presented my research, and I presented at a poster session in Chicago. And the response I got from people that they kept asking me that they're like, "Are you in graduate school?" I was like, "No." And they're like, "Well, what year are you as an undergrad?" And I was like, "I'm a junior." And just the response of like hearing from people that they were shocked and surprised that it was only a junior.
And that you're already doing something like that.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting to see, like, the response from people, because the summer before my freshman year in college, I went to this science camp, and I knew kids that they had their own published research when they were, like, juniors in high school. So it's just, like, it's that kind of interesting, like, difference to see, like, the fact of, like, how I was exposed to kids that were already even further past it in that sense. They're already doing it in high school, so...
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
It's not just exclusively in the geography department. There's a tremendous amount of undergraduate research
Yeah.
that's going on across this campus in multiple disciplines, which I think is just exceptional to this university.
There you go. Little free plug to Kutztown University right there. Great school. We're doing things that other schools are doing in the graduate level, and you're doing it as a junior undergraduate.
Yeah.
So fantastic. Any final comments, Dr. Davis?
No, just stay dry today. There's going to be a lot of, or at least on Thursday when we're
Yeah, no, I'll release it today. Even though I won't technically air tomorrow, I'll release it as a podcast today. By the time this actually airs on KUR over the air, it'll be tomorrow's looking sunny, but turning colder. Okay. Sounds good. Well, I want to thank you so much, Shana Rose, environmental geography major here at KU, and Dr. Michael Davis. Thanks once again. Dr. Davis and I should be back again one time next week so we can discuss if it's going to be 70 degrees on Christmas Eve and if there's any hope for a more seasonal New Year's Eve.
And I hope to have more guests on.
I hope so too. All right. See you then.